Let's talk a bit about concentration, and you mentioned it before as another one of preconditions for success. And perhaps again, it sort of is counterintuitive, or certainly stands in contrast to the business side. Let's face it, investors often diversify to protect their business. So what is your view? What's the kind of right way to think about concentrating how many positions for an emerging manager starting out with a blank sort of paper?
I mean, for an emerging manager or any manager, we fall very strongly on having a concentrated portfolio. And, you know, it really comes from me spending as much time as I had with Marty Whitman. I mean, Marty's coined the phrase that diversification is a surrogate, and a poor surrogate for knowledge, control, and price consciousness, and an invitation to mediocrity. So where you can't get control of a business, you want to have price sensitivity, and you also want to have a lot of knowledge of that business. And I would compare that to, you know, sending my 5-year-old daughter Lily to kindergarten, and her being one of 24 students versus one of 124 students. If you're one of 124 students, you're on your own. And I don't want a portfolio of securities that are on their own. So I would rather, just given what we know about investing and where we come from, for the managers to have as much knowledge about the businesses that they own. And you can be just as diversified from a mitigating risk point of view once you get past that incremental 18, 19 positions. So typically, the managers that we've worked with tend to be in that 10 to 25 core positions. There may be 30 if there's securities that are coming into the portfolio and some that are exiting, but really focusing on and taking advantage of the fact that you don't have to follow hundreds of names and you don't have to know them as intimately. These are names that you can do the work on. The portfolio manager is not outsourcing to junior analysts. They're not hiring a team to be able to become more diversified, to aggregate more assets. It's really one of those things that ties back to limited capacity in a big way, but one that also we understand that there are managers that have done well, that have been more broadly diversified, but it goes to, we think the probability of success diminishes by that incremental name that's added to the portfolio. I mean, I think Warren Buffett says that 100th name is not going to help you mitigate risk. It's actually going to hurt your portfolio from a knowing the business standpoint.
Yeah, and to me, having a concentrated portfolio is actually a risk mitigator because they know the names better. It also ultimately can lead to a performance enhancer because if something goes wrong or the stock price goes down, they have the conviction to add. They have the conviction. So if it's number 125 and it's a 0.5% position, you just don't care. I mean, it's just kind of like it's noise. So we actually think not only is it the proper way to invest, because we think people can only know so much about so many securities to the level that we want our managers to know about them. So we think it's just a natural way to manage the portfolios. We also think it has not only performance benefits, but risk benefits. For emerging managers that are starting out, though, I also think it has a marketing appeal. And what I mean by that is, if you're today, in the world we're in today, you're typically going to go through some sort of intermediary, whether it be at a multifamily office or at a RIA or something where you're dealing with individuals or families. They are likely to be using other managers. One manager very rarely is 100% of assets anymore. There's always some sort of basket. And this, quite frankly, was one of the things that I started to acknowledge in the late 90s, is if you're using more than one manager, in most cases you're using 3, 4, or 5, or 6, and each one of those managers has 150 securities in it, the next thing you wake up and you've got 1,000 securities, you're basically an index fund, and you're charging a ton of fees on top of it. So the end client at the allocator level is not benefiting. If you as a concentrated manager can come to me as an allocator with my best 20 ideas or my best 15 ideas, I now can visualize how that will pair with other managers that I may be working with. So it also allows the emerging manager to tell me more about those names so I can start to understand quicker the characteristics of their portfolio, how their decisions are made. So it actually can shorten the sales cycle. So being concentrated, I think, gives you a marketing advantage because people will be able to understand what you do. They know that you won't add just useless diversification to their total portfolio, and it may shorten the sales cycle because they can get comfortable with the way you view your names. Now, that isn't a common theme at every allocator. There are plenty of allocators that expect to see 50, 75, or 100. So if you are running a concentrated portfolio, which we believe is the right way to invest and believe managers should do, you have to then know what your end client is going to be, and you have to make sure that that end client agrees with you. So there is some give and take there.